All right, let me just start it off. Really closing the gap between online and offline, we see that as being really important, especially also in retail. We have talked about m-commerce today, we have talked about all these different things, but really closing the gap between that. One thing is that you have a mobile app, one thing is that people are actually engaging with the mobile while they are in the store, but you need to close it as well, so we both have that offline and online experience connected. We have started off with that in the Innovation Lab, and we're going to come more into detail about that, our experience of it, and especially also what kind of products you could develop and what kind of business insights and thoughts you could have behind that. Myself, I'm Christian. I'm a digital advisor in Valtech. I'm more or less helping companies leveraging the potential you have with the individual platforms you have with the channels and so. And I'll give it over to Katrina.
Yes, and I'll take this.
To
so I'm Katrina, and I'm one of the initiators of Valtech Store, or the connected store that we're going to talk about today. But now I'd like to take you shopping to a grocery store, although it looks a little bit nicer than the store that I normally go to. I don't know about you guys. But now I'd like for us to take on our experimental glasses when we look at this store, because running a store has always been very much about experimenting. You know, it can be anything from the planogram to seasonal promotions to, like, what would happen if I moved the apples just a little bit further down the aisle? How would that impact pickup rates, for example? So experimenting is nothing new. What is new, however, is that when we have a connected store and we have connected customers, suddenly we can aggregate so much more data that we can leverage into services to better customer experience and more efficient stores. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, let's see here. So, but before, we need to start to talk about the how we're going to get there, which is the experimental approach, before we talk about what we're going to do, the connected store. And experimenting is like so important because it's really, the way forward to create change. And I also think it's really interesting to talk about experimenting because it really puts what we do, e-com and retailing, into a bigger context in some sense. Because we all know that experimenting is like the very heart of innovation and entrepreneurship, right? I experienced it myself firsthand like 20 years ago when I was here in Copenhagen, and I started Jobline, which is now Monster. And everything we did in our business was new. The whole business model was new. The technology was new, and we were in a new market. So basically it meant for us that we had to be experimenting every day with our business. A lot has happened since then, of course, but that experimental sentiment or approach is no longer confined only to startup companies. It concerns us all. And basically, here's why it concerns us all. First of all, you've heard this a lot today, I'm sure. That retail is a business in rapid transformation, that we know that apart from physical production and urban infrastructure and healthcare, next comes retail as the area that's going to go through the major change the next 10 years thanks to new technology. Well, the second reason is really more complex in a way because it has to do with this. We're not as rational as we think. This is actually said by, Nobel Prize-winning scientists within economics and behavioral science, and I'm sure you've all read Daniel Kahneman. I have such a hard time pronouncing his surname, but Thinking Fast and Slow. But what these guys say is really that, mankind's success has led us to falsely believe that we can control complex systems. And we've been so successful. But, those complex systems could be, for example, societies that we cannot control, and even the brain that we cannot control. So the problem for us is that we don't have enough information. We lack information, and we're not rational. So from what we know now in research, we as humans are boundedly rational, which means that we can create the optimal solution, we can come up with the optimal solution to a problem, but only if we have all the information, which we seldom do. So instead, this is how we work. We learn over time. We learn from past experiences. We bring in new information. And then based on that, we tweak our learnings and our solutions. So the best decisions are really made out of interaction. And also, since we live in such a complex world, we need really simple rules of thumb that can direct us. But they cannot say anything about where we're going, because we don't know that. They can only say what we need to do. Okay, what does this all mean now? Because it's kind of big, because it basically means that instead of coming up with solutions to strategic problems beforehand, rather, we have to dive into the problem, we have to make mistakes, and we have to learn from that. And this is me, I work with strategy, and to me, this is really the failed promise of management consultancy. There is no optimal solution. And what we think is great today might be worthless tomorrow, or vice versa. So what we need to do is that, don't get ready, get started, as IDEO says. We all know this, that we cannot wait for change, that we have to create change, but how do we do that when it often feels like this? Risky, painful, scary. Well, there are a few things we do need in order to succeed when we experiment. And just to shorten it down, this could be a topic on its own. It's culture, fostering a really good culture where you can learn, where you can fail fast, and all of those things we know. Secondly, to work with insights, super important. And third, to work with commitment from management in terms of time, money, resources, attention. If we get all these things together, we can experiment and we can innovate. And yes, by the way, this is my son, Eric. And that's, the previous picture was how desperately miserable he was in the morning, and this is how happy he was towards the end of the day when he learned how to skate on this lake. So, okay, commitment. If we talk about commitment then, this is a perfect way to steer commitment, and you've seen it before, the 70-20-10. Google has used this for managing business innovations, and then it was really turned into how to allocate resources and staff. 70% on project, and then all the way to 10%, which is totally unrelated to what you normally do. That's one way to foster an experimental approach. Coca-Cola used it for its marketing budget. 70% we put on things that we really know work, so we can pay our bills. 20% we put on things that are semi-new, semi-safe. And 10% we go hog wild. We do things we've never done before. Now, we really advise our clients to work with this model, and we've seen that it works. It's not the solution, but it works. But it also goes for us, because we have to stay relevant as a business consultancy firm, or a digital consultancy firm, I should say. We also have to stay relevant to our clients. So we didn't do everything, but we got started. We created a lab where we can prototype, where we can test new things, we can have creative sessions, and we summoned people who are passionate about the same things as we are. And then we just recently launched Valtech Store in our best spot in our office in Stockholm. And it's the first release of a connected store, and we think that with the lab and with the store together, we wanted to create arenas where we could test new, interesting, promising concepts all the way to a prototype. And then we could really, try them even harder in a sort of retail setting, realistic retail setting. And we, of course, invite our clients to do this together with us. So that we can become like a lab-to-learn partner. So this is just the start. We're really eager to see where this goes. And now when we talked about this, we can move on to talk about the what, the connected store. So I hand over to you, Christian.
Thank you, Katarina. First of all, if you want, please come visit us in the lab store. Try out the different things over there. We believe it's cool. Here you now get to hear a bit of the story behind it, why we actually have developed the products which we have developed, and what kind of business incentives we believe there is behind that. So the connected store, as the next example. You all heard about the different technologies which are going to come now, IoT, sensors, all these different things. This is the first step against that, actually combining the online experience with the offline experience and creating that connected store. And why are we trying to tap into this area right now? Well, it's really because the digital natives, you heard about those for 10 years, but they have been there, but they are there now. In 2017, that's going to be your biggest target audience. So it's a whole other way of interacting with people combined to how you traditionally have done that. Attention span is short, it's really short. They are not loyal, you heard that before today as well. And you really need to pay their attention in other ways compared to how you've done previously. It's really about, if you want them to do different things, then you need to, they start off digitally. It's digital first and then they move on besides that. So you need to get your store connected. You need to get some digital components in there, living in there, because then you're tapping into that target audience, which is gonna be your biggest. If we look at some of the stats behind it, so really like seeking assistance, getting product information, payment, that target group, they don't want to do that face-to-face. They want to do that in their own digital device. And why is that? Because then they don't commit to anything. They don't get anything back they don't want. They don't get a salesperson which is a bit too aggressive towards them. They can really control the conversation they would like to have with you by themselves. On the other hand, that's of course a huge opportunity. And on the other hand, of course, we need to tap into it. Otherwise, we don't gonna connect with the target audience as we would like to do in the future. So what we see is that the people who are gonna get out there first, do the things, start testing, start having that experimental approach, and actually understanding how could I connect with my target audience, with the digital natives. That's the ones who are gonna win, keep their market position, and really grow it in itself. So the connected store which we have down there it's really based on 3 fundamental things which we would like to achieve. We have the customer experience. So through all of these digital artifacts, the different digital products we developed, how can you improve the customer experience in itself? So one thing is that you have a shoe or you have another product and you can touch and feel that, but shouldn't you try to enrich that experience in itself as well? You can do that through the digital devices, you can do it through the mobile, you can do it through other kinds of digital products, but really trying to enrich that experience in itself, that's going to be important for digital natives. The other one is that if they don't want to interact with sales staff and that part, how do you get that personal dialogue with them? You still need that, and you need it in store. So you need to be able to identify them, to actually tap into all of the data we know, which is accumulated behind the scenes from them, from previous interactions and so on. And then we have the efficiency part. So when we start actually applying different stuff in store, sensors, stuff like that, that's going to accumulate a lot of data, and you can use that to become even more efficient in the way that you actually work with your products. So these are the 3 main topics which we are working with down in the innovation lab. Come touch and feel it, and we can talk about that. The key though, guys, you heard about personalization, you heard about doing all of these different kind of things. But really in store, the differentiator is going to be those who actually get to identify people who have a huge enough business incentive for them actually to connect and identify themselves in store. Because then we're not only talking about getting people from online to the physical store, you are then also tapping into actually the ones who only go there, touch and feel the product and go home and buy it online again. And you can be there first then, because you know their preference, you know what kind of clothing they were looking at when they were in the store. So you need to get that identification in place. And with the digital natives, that's probably only going to happen through the digital products you're gonna develop. Right now, what we see is that people have a loyalty card. It's only transactional based. But all that behavior going on in store before you actually get to that transaction, you need to tap into that potential as well. Okay, so let's first look at what we actually developed for the customer experience. Yeah, let me just state before we go into that, you probably know it, all of you, but The research done by Forrester from stock valuation of companies, SAP Top 500 Index, you see a differentiation of 80.2% between customer leaders and customer laggards. So we are not just talking about making fancy products here, we're really talking about the core business, how you move your core business forward. And that being said, the first product we have developed for that is called the Connected Shoe. So it's more or less you take up in a shoe and you can move it around. You can get additional product information around this. You can have an endless ISO for it because you can tweak it, and then you get other colors of the shoe. And really having that enriched product experience, that's going to be important. That is not only a product in itself, but you have more to connect with the digital native around. The other part, the identification, so we actually can start creating the personal dialogue. That's of course also really, really something you should be looking into. What we have done here is really having the smart mirror, as it's called, connected to beacons. So what we know is that when people go out, take some clothing and bring that into the locker room, we know what cloth is in that locker room based on that beacon. And then we connect to people in there. We can take some of the e-commerce methodologies and actually apply that. So recommended product based on the product you have in there. That's what's going to be showcased in the mirror. But you can also actually get payment or save to basket happening on your mobile phone while you stand in that locker. And the one thing is that it's good for the consumer in itself, but you also get locked down the identification of the individual and their preference in terms of different kind of clothing in there. So that's one of the other products which we have developed. And what we believe is that you need to apply like the business model of the freemium into your in-store experience. So one thing is that you have a basic experience which you deliver more or less as we do today. But the other part what really needs to happen in there is that if people go and identify themselves, then you're going to provide them a premium service on top of that, because then you can retarget them afterwards if they don't buy directly in the store. So just a short example, because we need to get started, as Katrina said. What we have done with CPH Airport is really looking into how could we lower the barrier of actually tapping into all of the different steps we have on the customer journey. When we have an e-com web shop and we're talking about the context of airports, we have four major parts of the customer journey. We have before travel, we have while you are at the airport, while you are at the destination, and after you returned home from that. We tried to lower the barrier of how we could identify people in all of these different phases, so we actually could become relevant and push the right product to the right person at the right time. So what we've done is really before travel, that's the classic e-com methodologies which we actually use there. We would really like for people to pre-order goods, so whenever they are in the airport, they have already committed to buying different products. And we need to do that through segmentating communication as we always are doing with e-commerce, with relevant products and so forth. So nothing new on that part. What we though are doing with the e-com web shop here and combining the offline with the online world is that whenever somebody is going to log into the Wi-Fi in the airport, we know that you're there. So why not change the communication we do, because you are there, you are in store at the airport. So what should we then be doing? Yeah, we should be having relevant product based on you are in the airport. So instead of trying to sell different clothing or something like that, it needs to be really short term. It needs to be about food and beverage, so something you can bring to the plane. So we're going to change the whole product catalog, which we're going to present in the e-com web shop based on that you are now in the airport instead. It's becoming relevant based on that. And then of course we will really like for people to make it around to the different stores. They are on average there 90 minutes, so it's a short time we actually have for people to go visit some different stores. So we need to provide some guidance instead of just trying to push some pre-ordering to them directly there as well. And then the beauty of it is that we know that they on average are there 90 minutes. So 6 hours later, we know they are not in the airport anymore. They are at some specific destination. So then we're going to tailor the communication and the push we would like to do on getting them to pick up goods whenever they return back to the airport again. But this is only happening, this kind of communication, based on that you have identified people as being in store. So we already have talked about ROPO for quite some years, but this is actually ROPO to the second degree. The first is that, yes, research online, go purchase offline. We are there, we're doing that, but research offline, purchase online. That's a trend which is emerging quite a lot, and you need to tap into that, but you're only doing that with that identification in itself. So if one thing should come out of this is that you need to figure out on the digital products you develop to enrich the product experience, is that you get people to identify themselves in the store as well, because that's opening up your business opportunities. So ROPO, two-way.
Okay. The last part, and it's really quick. I'm going to show you 3 slides. But what they all do is that they look at the connected store that we've talked about, and then how we've applied ways we normally work in the digital world to the offline world. So, click. With scales or with beacons and other types of sensors, we track what's happening in the store. So we can track how many pickups a certain item has on a promotion, and if it changes, if I just slightly push the thing a little bit to the right. We can track, like you were saying, how items are moved from the shelf to the dressing room onwards to purchase, down to per project, per product. And like we said, we can also, I didn't say that, but we can also track like sentiments. We're working with artificial intelligence. We're not quite there yet, but we're at least elaborating on it, how we can also track sentiments of people in the store. So all of these things are geared towards greater efficiency for the retailers. And that's all I'm going to say about that, really.
Yeah, what you more or less can get out of that is the conversion funnel you normally see on traditional e-com websites. How many people entered the store? How many did actually pick up the specific product? How many went to the cashier and actually bought it? And how many went out of the store with it once again, of course. So it's really tapping into what kind of my retail store isn't performing at the moment. Isn't that people aren't picking the different products up? Or is it that they don't take it to the locker room? Or is it that they don't actually buy this? And tapping into that and actually making that core of the initiatives you should bring up into optimizing your in-store experience. That's going to be key as well, because the data is there whenever you apply these kind of products in there.
Absolutely. And if you come and visit us, we can also show you how we work with dashboards. So every single unity we work with has a layer of data-driven knowledge. Okay, so that was it. Mm-hmm. And now we have the question for you. So we're done with this. The whole idea about this was the chance to be thinking more elaborative or experimental about our businesses. So this is the question we're asking you, but if you feel that you need to tweak it around your tables to better suit whatever situation you're in, please feel free to do so. But our question was like, after this, which is the first initiative that you're thinking of that you could do to connect your commerce better, online, offline, connect the puzzle pieces better? Is that okay? Do you think you could, does it feel like something you could start talking about? How many of you have how many of you meet your customers in a physical space, in some kind of physical space? Okay, good. That goes for almost all of you. So then I think it would be relevant to say, okay, I meet my customers somewhat physical, I meet them digitally, how can I tie these dots together?